Well, at half-time, with the score Ireland 6, France 8, I did not expect that at full-time. Welcome back to the channel. The match has just finished between Ireland and France in the Six Nations. Heavily billed, not necessarily, I think, the full-time score many people predicted, but certainly a test match packed full of quality. If you're looking to avoid the result, click off the video now. If you have watched the game, give me your thoughts in the comments. Also, like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. But wow, what a result for France. What a performance overall from the French. And the Six Nations Championship is, relatively speaking, blown wide open now. Super Saturday is on. Multiple teams potentially in with the chance to win it, or certainly multiple teams in Ireland and France. We'll see if England can join them depending on what they do tomorrow. But what a game. What a performance. What a statement win that is for a French side that, well, needed it. Quite simply, needed the result. I'll try and get into the various different things that, off the top of my head, are some of the big talking points to get into. I suppose my top line, if I was to, in an oversimplistic way, give my thoughts, it's that France held on when under pressure. Ireland didn't. France took their chances when they came, for the most part. Ireland didn't. And discipline. The couple of yellow cards that France were then able to capitalise on. If I was looking at it in a really simplistic way. But I think certainly the second point I mentioned there of taking your opportunities is so relevant here. And it's been one of the lessons of this Six Nations, hasn't it? I mean, France and Scotland in their defeats to England at Twickenham was a case of them not taking their opportunities. And this game isn't quite the same as that because the final scoreline ended up being much more in France's favour. It wasn't a 1-point win like those games. But you've got to take your opportunities, don't you? Like that first 15, 20 minutes, in hindsight, a little bit perhaps, but it's pretty key in this game. Like maybe it is hindsight, but you feel like Ireland needed to land more of a blow in that period. And they didn't. They were playing some great stuff. They were putting France under pressure. They were moving the ball well. Their attack looked really slick. Loads of things that we're accustomed to seeing from this Ireland team. And on this occasion, they couldn't get themselves over the try line. And I just wonder how much confidence that gave France, given the context of what happened to them at Twickenham against England. Given the fact that they had been in a match where they themselves had wasted opportunities and allowed their opponents to get something out of the game, I just wonder how much of a boost that gave this French team because of those experiences and knowing that at this level you have to take your chances. The fact that they were under pressure and they held Ireland out wasn't the same as France at Twickenham because that was them literally dropping passes when they're about to get themselves over the line. Ireland didn't do that, but they weren't clinical enough in the red zone. Watching on ITV, they flashed up a stat, I can't remember, midway through the second half, and it was like France had made 7 trips to the Ireland 22 and scored 29 points, and Ireland had made like 8 trips to the French 22 and at that point had come away with single digits in terms of points. At this level, that is the difference. So take your opportunities, without question, a lesson from this Six Nations. But there are 2 other big things, I think, in that French performance. There's loads of different stuff we could get into and loads of individual players that had superb games. But it's the bench and it was their defence. The bench we spoke about beforehand, the 7-1, I'll get onto Dupont in a moment because at one point I was thinking, is this going to bite them? Losing their captain and talisman and having to bring Lukaku off the bench so early, could that leave them exposed? But without question, the French bench had a real impact in the first 20 minutes of that second half. And that is what took the game away from Ireland, combined with yellow cards and France making the most of it. But the power and fresh legs they had coming off that bench had a real impact in this game. So that was mega. And then it was the defence, which just fought for their lives, didn't it? Like there have been times with this French defence recently where you couldn't necessarily see Shaun Edwards' fingerprints over it in the way that we used to. It didn't look quite as tough. Today, it looked really good. In particular, I thought the way in which they scrambled. Because, as I say, Ireland did put them under pressure. They were on the back foot. Ireland were looking to move the ball wide, but France were able to answer a lot of those questions that were posed. And a lot of that comes down to work rate, to desire, and their physicality. Their physicality was really good today. How many times did we see big hits in the midfield that rocked Ireland backwards? The only thing I think that Shaun Edwards will look at it, he'll be pretty disappointed with those 2 late tries because France clearly, I think, knew they had the game won and sometimes just naturally your levels drop off a little bit Ireland scored a couple of tries. Similarly, I suppose, to what England did to Ireland in that game at the Aviva, where they scored a couple of late ones. But let's talk about Antoine Dupont. Hopefully he's okay. Always nasty when you see those sorts of incidents around the breakdown. On first viewing, I thought there was potentially an argument that Tadhg Beirne went off his feet. It was certainly a clumsy clear out. Having watched it again, I think he just about stayed on his feet long enough, and he wasn't targeting the lower limbs, so I think it was okay that it wasn't kind of any further yellow card or anything like that. Certainly not a red, because he wasn't targeting the lower limbs, but it was clumsy. But at that moment, when you lose Dupont, I'm sure loads of us were thinking, this could be tough now for France. Long way to go in the match, in Ireland against Dublin. But you know what? Fair play to the team as a whole, and fair play in particular to Maxime Lucu, who was outstanding. Not just from the base and injecting pace into the attack and kind of stitching play together, but also his defence was excellent. He was flying out of the line. What a brilliant performance from the replacement scrum half. A man that has to live in the shadow of Antoine Dupont. It will always be Dupont when he's fit that starts for the French. But Lucu took that opportunity and was absolutely excellent. It's probably quite a good example of France as a whole. Like Mofana in the centre, I thought had one of the best games I've seen him have for France. Those forwards, so many of them were physical, were dynamic, were getting in the faces of the Irish team. Superb. And one player in particular we have to mention is Louis Biel-Biarré, who gets a lot of plaudits at the moment, and understandably so. I mean, he is fast becoming one of the best wingers in the world, and I'd imagine there's some of you that might already put him at the top of that list, but his pace is just a difference maker, isn't it? Like that try he scored where he kicked through, just blistering pace to get there, causes so many problems, was excellent again today. You can see the French players knowing if they have a bit of space, find Biel-Biarré, because he is able to make things happen that a lot of other players aren't able to. He was superb, France was superb. Finish on Ireland though. It's a funny thing, isn't it? We speak about it all the times in the Six Nations, how sometimes we focus too much on results, even though results are in a way the only thing that matters. But results do change the complexion. They do change your view of a team and how you view a team. Like Ireland get through that game, and I will be waxing lyrical on this video about the fact that they probably were about to win another Grand Slam, 3 titles in a row, like all that sort of stuff. And now it looks like, well, they definitely won't win the Grand Slam. They're behind France in the table. Like whether they will win the Six Nations this year is more uncertain. And I think you start to look maybe more at the negatives. And maybe that's the thing. You know, when you win, you just look at the positives and you're kind of able to not really worry too much about the negatives because the team's won. When they lose, maybe we focus too much on the negatives. But that is probably what my eye was drawn towards in this game, which is a few different things. Firstly, Sam Prendergast. Super talent. And even in this game, I think there was still some really good stuff from him. But I think once again, we saw physically, like, look, he's a young guy. We know he needs to develop physically. But I think France did target him and were able to get to him at times. Another one of those I would say is you look at Peter O'Mahony, Conor Murray, Cian Healy. And by the way, what absolute legends of the game in Ireland. Like superb careers from those guys. And fair play to them. Less so with O'Mahony, with him retiring. I think Ireland still have very strong options in that back row. But particularly at 9, particularly at loose head prop, you start to look at that team and you think, what are the options? Who's coming through there? Where's the strength in depth there? And then the third thing and final thing, linked to what I was saying about Prendergast, is I just wonder whether there are times that you can get at this Ireland team physically. Am I being too reactive? I don't know. I think I say that just because I look at the first half against England, where I think England physically really fronted up and made it tough for Ireland. You look at, in particular, the second half here, but this game as a whole, and I think the way in which France were able to boss it. I just wonder whether this is an Ireland pack and an Ireland team that if you have the right personnel, you can get at them physically. Or maybe all of those concerns are overblown because of the fact that they've lost this game. Like, let's not forget, this was a team that were 20 minutes ago, or an hour ago, were not that far away from looking like they were going to do a second Grand Slam in 3 years, win 3 titles in a row, that have done all these incredible things. And progression isn't linear. I love that expression. Progression isn't linear. You have some good days, you have some bad days. They are still a good team. I suppose the point I'm making, that I've said already, is defeats kind of focus your mind on the negatives. How fair is that for Ireland? Or is that just a bit reactionary and unfair on a team that are clearly superb? They just had a pretty bad day at the office. Not clinical enough, discipline let them down, and weren't able to hold up under the French pressure. Those are my thoughts on the game. Give me yours in the comments, like the video as well, and hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to the channel, give me your views. I look forward to reading them. I'll see you in the next one.